Hey everybody, welcome to the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host Cody Potter. How y'all doing today? We're gonna first off, I hope everybody had a blessed, happy Easter, man. Hopefully everybody had a great, safe holiday with their family. Hopefully everybody got to enjoy that time. He has risen. I'm very, very blessed to do this podcast, so I just felt like I needed to say that. We're getting to it, man. We're getting to the draft. We are, about 3 Thursdays away. So we're about 24 days away, something like that. Or not, actually, not even 24 days away. We're less than that. We're about 19 days away, something like that. Either way, I wanted to get to quite a few players, man. We're going to talk about first rounders. We're going to talk about guys that I think are really, really, really going to be impactful in this league. I'm going to talk about real potential picks for the Washington Commanders. I'm going to give you guys some comps, and I'm going to talk about certain players that just what I think about them. We all know what I think about Jeremiah Love. I think he just gives you such an elite skill set, man. He's a pretty hard guy to comp. I mean, when you talk about the size, when you talk about the skill set, the contact balance, I don't necessarily like him necessarily hurdling over guys constantly and things like that. I wish he would kind of keep his feet on the ground, because his best skill set is when he digs his foot into the ground and the contact balance and things like that. And when he's driving through, he's a very, very elite player, man. I think what this guy offers you is everything you're looking for systematically to help Jayden Daniels. I mean, I've talked about it ad nauseum with him. He is the spy eraser for this offense. If you're trying to maximize Jayden Daniels, I think he's the best player that you're going to pick in this draft. Not just because I have him as my best player. I have Jayden Daniels. You take away the spy from Jayden Daniels and allow Jayden Daniels to win from the pocket. And this is a guy that allows you to do that, not just systematically because of him being everything that you anticipated Austin Ekeler to be. When you had Austin Ekeler, the check down game, the being able to have that safety outlet out of the backfield to be able to throw the ball to on 3rd and 3, and the defense was right and they covered it up. That type of player erases the spy from the quarterback position. So they're either going to cover Jeremiah Love out of the backfield as a wide receiver, or they're going to have to spy, or they're going to spy Jayden Daniels and his legs. And I mean, realistically, systematically, that is basically impossible. The skill set of Jayden Daniels and the way that he can win from the pocket basically means you need 12 defenders on the field, and we just know that isn't it, unless the referees want to jump in. But I don't ever really credit referees for anything that they do. I mean, they make the calls, they do their job, but realistically, if you're going up against officials that are calling games tight, things like that, you got to beat the officials too, man. You got to play a clean game, and you can't be beating yourself. So I mean, realistically, I think Jeremiah Love and the things that he offers you, it's a really elite level skill set, man. And now I'm going to get to a player that I really, really do love, and that's Rueben Bain Jr., man. And I have a comp for this guy because I think what he offers you is a really, really unique skill set. And the things that Rueben Bain Jr. does, he reminds me of James Harrison. James Harrison, the old Pittsburgh Steelers defensive end, man. Is Rueben Bain best skill set? In a 3-4, I think there's multiple ways that you can use him. Could he be rushing from the 3-4 end spot? Could he be rushing from the 3-4 outside linebacker spot? I think he has the skill set. I think he has the explosiveness. I think he has the intangibles, the instincts, and everything to do both of those things, as you just seen. I mean, rushing out of the 4-3, we've seen him rush without his hands in the dirt. We've seen him rush with his hand in the dirt. So, I mean, there's the skill set for both. The reason I comp him to James Harrison is because the way that he uses his skill set, he does not have long arms. We've talked about that, at a crazy clip. The natural instincts to know, systematically what offensive linemen are doing in front of him, the way that he attacks, whether it's stunts, it's blitzes. This guy is a truly dynamic football player. Do I think he even is available to us? I mean, if he is, I think the league is getting it wrong. I think he is one of the best football players all around in this draft. I've talked about him not being a blue chip level player, just simply based off of measurables and things like that, because I mean you don't have the elite measurables, but what he is he is a blue level player on the field. And I mean the tape speaks for itself, the power speaks for itself, his football IQ speaks for itself. Everything that Rueben Bain Jr. offers you, man, like I said, I graded him as a red simply because I mean it's really, really hard to give a blue level grade to a guy when you're comping him to, you know, a player who's going to play the same position as, you know, Myles Garrett, or like a Jadeveon Clowney coming out, a Mario Williams coming out, you know, guys that I've given blue level grades, you know, Nick Bosa, guys like that. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson. There's, you know, and then the skill sets that you've seen go number 1, number 2 overall, whether it's Trayvon Walker, who just got paid from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the elite athletic profile that he gave you, maybe without the tape, things like that, who I graded as a red simply off of the athletic, you know, intangibles and things like that, but, you know, didn't have the tape to, you know, kind of back it up, which was why he was a red level prospect for me. And then you look at Aiden Hutchinson, who they were talking about measurably and things like that, you know, with the arms and, you know, all those things, and we all saw what Aiden Hutchinson was. And when you comp a player, you know, you talk about Rueben Bain Jr. and his disruptive, you know, his disruptive makeup. No, he's not 6'5", 6'6" like Aiden Hutchinson and things like that. But you talk about Aiden Hutchinson's arms and things like that were being talked about him throughout the draft process. Rueben Bain Jr. has a very, very, you know, similar impact on the field. It shows up time and time and time again, and this is why I prefer these type of prospects, man. I think these guys pan out a lot more than the height, weight, speed guys. Which is why if I'm giving you a red level, but you're blue on a tape, and your one flaw is your athletic, your physical makeup and things like that, like trust me, when I'm grading that, it's not a harsh mark. What it is I just think Rueben Bain Jr. is that good of a football player. And the reason I comp him to James Harrison, it's the way that he gets into offensive linemen and things like that. I'm going to get to this next player who's very similar in that same regard. You know, Caleb Downs, again, you know, the tape is king for me. And, you know, we've talked about Caleb Downs. And, you know, when I'm comping this guy, when I think about what I see from this guy in the box, when I think about what I see from the range in the first 15 and in yards, I mean, this guy reminds me so much of Troy Polamalu coming out of USC back in the day. When I'm comping this guy, you know, I'm comping this guy to a first ballot Hall of Famer type. I'm not comping him to that player in Pittsburgh. I'm comping him to what he was coming out of college. And when I'm saying that is we all know that it translated for Troy Polamalu. Of course, injuries and things like that never, you know, it allowed him to thrive and be that type of player. I think this is that type of level player. And for everything that, you know, Caleb Downs showed at Ohio State, I remember watching this guy in Nick Saban's defense as a true freshman, and he was playing that Minkah Fitzpatrick role, which was a completely different role from what he played as a pure strong safety and things like that at Ohio State, and the different usages and things like that and the nuances of what he was asked to do systematically. I believe realistically, if we're talking, I mean, when I'm comping him to Troy Polamalu, it's because of the last 2 years on tape and the position that he played and the, you know, the intangibles, the skill set, the football IQ, the complete, you know, a systematic, you know, approach of him being able to tackle and just bring guys down in a multitude of body positions and things like that. And just like you see you going up in batting passes and things like that, he's not the biggest guy in the world, and neither was Troy Polamalu as far as, you know, height, weight, speed. And Troy Polamalu wasn't the fastest guy in the world, but he played faster because he knew where to be all the time. And that's where Caleb Downs really stands out to me. Now, if I think about 3 years of him in a Nick Saban defense, which we never got to see because he transferred to Ohio State after his true freshman year, and we know what he did at Ohio State, and we saw his usage. We know, I'm not worried about this guy. If he had to play deep, or if he had to play the deep half, or, you know, playing the deep third, I know he can do all those things. I saw him do it at Alabama. I saw him do it in high school, and he did it at Ohio State. I mean, realistically, when I think about Caleb Downs, man, I see a guy that if he played 3 years in Nick Saban's defense, I mean, we're talking about Ed Reed level stuff. I mean, we're talking about an Ed Reed level prospect, and I think it's all three levels of the defense. He's smart enough to do it. I've talked about his physical makeup, and again, tape trumps all. And I mean, I've said this time, and I believe this to be true. I think Caleb Downs for the Washington Commanders, I think, while I do believe that the best thing you can do is improve everything around Jayden Daniels under his rookie deal and moving forward long term for him, I said it, and I believe this, that if you add Caleb Downs to this defense, I think he gives you the biggest improvement overall throughout the roster in total, whether it's helping out Mikey Sainristil in the communication that this team has lacked on the back end. I think it maybe allows you to put Quan Martin down into, the nickel packages and things like that, and it gives you a variation of being able to interchange him between Quan Martin and Caleb Downs. I think it cleans up the linebacker positions and things like that and allows them to play free. I think adding to the defensive front on the edges and closing off the edges with better football players, whether it's a Menahu, whether it's Clavon Chason, or whether it's, Odafe Owe, I think that right there was that was a big reason for a lot of miscommunications, because one, we could not get pressure on the quarterback, and two, we were getting gashed on the sidelines and gashed, in the run game on the edges. And again, we remember it from a couple years ago, man, whether it was, the Saquon Barkley going off in the NFC title game and things like that, and everything that, transpired in that game. Whether it's, just Caleb Downs cleans all these things up, even when the edges do their job and when the offensive line wins on the trenches, and, Odafe Owe or Clavon Chason get, swallowed up in the run blocking game, because it's going to happen. Caleb Downs is going to be there to clean it up, and it would be very, very similar with the Sonny Styles and things like that. So again, man, there's a lot of things, and these are the top three players for this team for me. And I mean, I put Sonny Styles right in that, and I mean, it would be between them four. I mean, you can get into the Mansour Delane discussion, because I mean, having a premier level cornerback outside, I mean, that's huge positional value. I mean, it really, really does clean up a lot of things. And then getting into, these guys, I mean, these are the top five guys for this team, whether it is as you see, Caleb Downs, Mansour Delane, I love David Bailey. I've talked about it ad nauseum. I don't think he's there. If you go up here, if you're going Arvell Reese, I don't think he's there. I think he would be a perfect schematical fit for what Dan Quinn has always kind of done. I think he would fit the Durante Jones mold as well. I think realistically, you're picking between these five players, and whatever variation of it is, two or three of these guys will be gone by the time that we pick. I do 1000% believe that we're not going to be picking between all five. There's another name I'm going to put in here in a minute, and then we're going to get to some of the day two pick options that I think we have, and we're going to spread throughout the board for that as far as where they're ranking and where their names are. So it's Jeremiah Love, Sonny Styles, Ruben Bain Jr., Caleb Downs, and Mansour Delane. And even this next name for me, whilst I do like Daniel Thieneman, I don't know if that's necessarily where you're going to go. I do think he has the highway speed to kind of fit that Adam Peters type of mold for what he loves. That is kind of my one concern when it comes to Ruben Bain Jr., when it comes to what AP typically looks for. But AP also did pick Mikey Sainristil in the second round, and he's not a high-weight speed guy. And it was an all-tape type of player. Again, I think Caleb Downs is in there. I mean, ideally, I think the perfect prospect for Adam Peters is going to be between your Sonny Styles and your Jeremiah Love. Now, when you get to the solely on the tape, it's going to be between these next names, and that's who I said. That's Caleb Downs, it's Ruben Bain Jr., it's Mansour Delane, and then Carnell Tate is the wild card for me. I think Carnell Tate probably gets picked. I think there's going to be that Cleveland Browns, Ohio State keeping him in state kind of thing. That's just where I'm going for this. So let's get into some day two things, man. We've talked about these guys at the top end a ton, man, and I've talked about a lot of players that are going to go in the second round and things like that. And as we know, the Washington Commanders don't have a second rounder. They have to trade down and things like that. I don't think this is the draft where you're going to start seeing a lot of trade down opportunities. So again, man, like we've talked about this in mock drafts. I mean, we've talked about Elijah Surratt, just a steady Eddie. I mean, a true dynamic guy outside with his route running ability, his hands catching through contact and things like that. Romello Height, I think that's a real option player, a little bit older. Connor Lew is a guy. I wanted to talk about Connor Lew, the offensive center from the Auburn Tigers, and I really do think there's a world where, I mean, whilst I have Logan Jones kind of as my premier, I like Jake Slaughter a lot. I love his size. I love his athleticism and things like that. Connor Lew is another one of them guys between that, and then my highest graded center, who is Sam Heck, the Kansas State Wildcats center. I think any of them four are a realistic option that is more drafting for need, but it is also a point in the draft where, top level centers typically get picked around in the 70s, early, late round 2, early round 3. I mean, that's going to be kind of the range for some of these players. And as I've scrolled down, I mean, you've seen all four of these names. Again, there's Logan Jones right there. Ted Hurst. Ted Hurst is a big 6'4". I mean, this is the type of receiver that honestly, it's pretty much eluded this team in my lifetime. I mean, even back to the Art Monk, Gary Clark days in the posse. I mean, those were not 6'4" type athletes. Ted Hurst is a guy coming out of Georgia State who just has so much of that Brandon Marshall type of skill set coming out of UCF. I think wide receiver at 71 is going to be the more logical point for this team. I mean, I think, I've mentioned Carnell Tate because I mentioned him as a wild card. I think their grades are going to be much better on a defensive player in round 1. I think the strength of this draft is defense. But the wide receiver position, when you get into that 70 range, I think that's really where you're going to start talking about some guys, and that's why I'm bringing up Ted Hurst and his skill set. It's the run after the catch. It's the ability to win above the rim. It is the physical element in nature that he brings, hard to bring down, 6'4", 220 pounds, has the explosive, markers and all the things that you look for. He is a much faster prospect than, what we had seen from Brandon Marshall at UCF. A guy that I kind of probably have to go down here for. I remember I had to move him up quite a bit when I did him on my big board personally. I'm not using my big board for this show. CJ Daniels, the Miami Hurricanes wide receiver. Again, this is a guy that honestly, like, he reminds me so much of what Terry McLaurin gives you. Can win vertically deep over the seam, inside the seam and things like that. Has the body control to win on the sidelines and things like that. I mean, from what you see from Terry McLaurin, the way that he wins outside the hashes, the way that he wins over the top, the yards after catch and the physical nature of the game. CJ Daniels reminds me so much of Terry McLaurin, coming out, where it was kind of always overshadowed at his stops, whether it was LSU, whether it was Miami, Malachi Fields and things like that. CJ Daniels was kind of behind, was the guy kind of behind Kyron Lacy and guys like that. I mean, rest in peace to Kyron Lacy, but he was behind him at LSU. CJ Daniels is a guy that, he has all the skill sets, man. And when healthy, man, this guy's an impact football player in college football. And like I said, he just reminds me so much of the way that he wins above the rim. Not the biggest guy, but plays much bigger than his size. Not the fastest guy in the world, but, has more juice than what I think his time speed is, and the hands. I mean, just the consistency of the hands and the way that he's improved his hands from his time at LSU to Miami. He just reminds me so much of, just so similar to Terry McLaurin, man. And I think if you're looking long term, I think that's the type of player that you want on your roster. I'm kind of going up here for some other wide receivers because there's so much variation to wide receivers. It's a pick your poison. It's where will they go? Consensus rankings and grades and overalls and things like that don't really matter when teams get on the clock, because teams, a wide receiver might get taken ahead of them and then they start to go on a run because teams decide that, they don't want to miss out on their guy. So they might overdraft a guy, they might draft a Bryce Lance because they want that 4.2 speed vertically, even though maybe he isn't that, grading out at the position where he's picked. I have Bryce Lance much lower than 6 feet 2. Skylar Bell, I talked about him on my top 100 big board. He's a guy that I really, really, really love. And then, you see the edge Derek Moore here. We've talked about him and Danny Dennis Sutton, man. These are two guys that I've mocked at this team multiple times. These are two guys that I think their best football is ahead of them. And, depending on where we go round one, if it is a Caleb Downs, if it is, a Sonny Styles or a Jeremiah Love, when you get to round 3, that's where need starts to factor in. And whether it is the wide receiver position, I had talked about the centers and things like that. I mentioned the 4 centers that would definitely be on the board and definitely be value at that point. Slaughter, Hecht, Logan Jones, and Connor Lew. All 4 of these guys give you that type of level of play. And then, the range on Jacob Rodriguez for me, I think he's a second-round player. I think he tested and did everything that he needed to do. I think Jacob Rodriguez is an elite-level player. Chris Bell was another guy that I had talked about looking like a much faster version of Brandon Marshall, and I think he had the first-round level. He had first-round tape. The ACL is the only reason he's even ranked down here in the 40s. I've ranked him very, very similarly to that. I might even have had him higher. I could have had him lower just simply because of the injury. Don't really remember as far as, exactly the number where I had him on my big board. But again, Bell would make a lot of sense, especially at 71. You're talking about a player that would have been a first round pick. And then this player right here, man, this is a guy. I tend to love the skill set of these wide receivers coming out of Tennessee because I know that they're not running elite level route tree. When I look at, I very much do a lot more scouting than just watching the tape. I watch these guys on 7-on-7s play flag football and things like that. I watch these guys and who they work with in the offseason and the videos that they post. Chris Brazzell was the guy to me that I think at 6'5" with his vertical level speed, that Vincent Jackson type, game changer over the top with elite level speed, where he was a much faster player than Vincent Jackson was. This guy's movement skills are much better than most guys that will ever come out at 6'5", and the way that he can win in and out of breaks. When I watch this guy, doing his drills and working with his wide receiver coaches and things like that in the offseason, man, Chris Brazzell is a guy that I think his best football is very much ahead of him. I think when this guy has the ability to prove his route tree from what we've seen at Tennessee to what he offered on tape at Tennessee. I think this guy in the NFL is going to be a really, really, really good football player. And again, the reason that I'm mentioning the offensive centers, the reason that I'm bringing up the linebackers, the reason that I'm bringing up the wide receivers is because when you get to round 3, that is where need starts to really, really come into play. And then you're looking at, systematic fits and things like that. And this is where I think the Washington Commanders are going to get a really, really, really good impact player at a position of need where the value also meets the pick, and whether it is linebacker, whether it is, wide receiver, it is diving in, or it could be edge, if you don't pick a Ruben Bain Jr. in the first round and things like that to give you a long-term developmental piece with high-end level, blue level upside. It could be the Derek Moores or the Danny Dennis Suttons of the world who have first-round ability and they have first-round flashes and first-round tape, at moments. And they also have some things that you wanted to see cleaned up and things like that. But again, this is where I think you're going to get a player at a position of need, again, it's these 4 positions for me. It is wide receiver at 71. It is offensive center at 71. It is going to be a guy that is going to come onto this roster and is going to make an impact by week 6, week 8, and on. And I think they're going to develop into a really, really core player on this team and give you something that this roster does not have, whether it is size, whether it is a size variation of size and speed. The last 3 players I've talked about, whether it's Chris Brazzell, whether it was the Ted Hurst, or whether it was the Chris Bell from Louisville, Skylar Bell, more in that Terry McLaurin, route you up, 5'10", 5'11", can play above the rim, that CJ Daniels type. Again, it is going to be preference. It is going to be what are we looking for? Who do we think gets it? Do they block? Are they good players? Do we believe that they have the athletic markers to hit everything that you're looking for to be a complementary player to what Terry McLaurin does vertically outside, things like that, things that Jaden Daniels thrives in? I think Chris Brazzell is a guy that I think is if there, I think he's going to be a very, very hard player to pass. And again, Skylar Bell, I think he's going to make a team look really, 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 really smart for taking him in the third, second round, wherever he's going to go. Again, it really, really depends on where the runs start, whether it's offensive center. Could it be late round 2 and then they're all bottled up, all 4 of them are gone before you get to pick 71? Well, maybe that leaves you a wide receiver. Maybe that leaves you a Derek Moore. Could the edge run start, mid round 2 and things like that, just because you get a team and they're like, I'm getting my guy right here. And then you start to see the Danny Dennis Suttons going off the board. Does that drop a linebacker in play? Again, I think pick 71 is going to be between these 4 positions. I think, pick 7 could be between these 4 positions. I've mentioned them. But I think, Jeremiah Love and Sonny Styles and things like that, I think, Caleb Downs, I think they're going to very much be in play, outside of these positions and things like that, because they are just the best player available. So again, man, this is just my board, and this is how I'm looking at it. This is these are going to be the day 1, day 2 focuses for the draft. I think it's between those 5 or 6 guys. Realistically, when we are on the clock at 71, I think 3 of them. I know 3 of them guys will be available. Whether it is the Sonny Styles, Jeremiah Love, Caleb Downs, Carnell Tate, Mansour Delane, and Carnell Tate. So again, man, but between those 5 or 6 guys, and then like I said, man, I think very much between the 4 offensive centers that I gave you, the 6 wide receivers that I've mentioned, the linebacker position, whether it be AJ Hill, whether it be Jacob Rodriguez, whether it's the Derek Moore and the Danny Dennis Suttons, the edges of the world, I think that's where this team is very, very likely to go for round 3, pick 71. We could even move up a little if we needed to. If they really, really think that the player that they love is not going to be there at pick 71, I could see them putting an asset or 2 into moving up to get their guy. If they really, really feel like that guy could maybe even be a day 1 impact player on this team, maybe get more reps than what you thought out of a 3rd round player. Maybe you get that Terry McLaurin instant impact player that he just fits so well on this team that realistically day 1 he's going to be starting and playing viable reps as a day 1 starter. I think that option is available for this team. I think this draft has that type of player. I think that the round 2, round 3, round 4 players that you're going to get in this draft, even round 5 or 6, whether it's the linebacker position, safety position, or the edge position, I think have the ability to have some day 1 starters, or by week 8 they're going to be year 1 impact players on this team, whether it's the pass rushing role or things like that. Whatever their skill set is, I think you're going to find that guy in this draft, and that's why I'm highlighting these guys for our pick at 71, whether it's moving up or whether it's just sitting pat and getting your guy at one of these positions. I think it is going to be between these 4 positions. So again, man, this is where I wanted to go. We're really, really getting close to the draft. Like I said, I wanted to lock all this in because it's really where we are at this day. I think teams are really, really going to really identifying what they want. Their top 30 visits are commencing. The draft is here to stay, man. Free agency will commence again after the draft. Maybe a couple guys get signed before the draft and things like that. Could there be some trades and things like that? I think we will see some trades, leading up to the draft, during the draft, and things like that will impact what is going on in the draft. But again, man, if you had to ask me today, I think these are really, really the guys that you're going to look forward to being, wearing that burgundy and gold, wearing those April 15th, unveiled, kind of throwback unis that we're going to be wearing again. I think it's going to be Super Bowl era style from here on out with the white stripes on the helmets, things like that. I hope they stay matte, gold face mask, things like that. So again, I think that's what we're going to be seeing on April 15th. There's a lot to look forward to for this team. So again, man, I appreciate you guys checking out the Blue Chip Podcast. Wanted to get this out there for you. Because to me, these are the names. These are the players. These are the direction I think this team is looking at. These are the type of players that really, really fit the mold of what Adam Peters would or could or likes to do. I put Ruben Bain Jr. on there because even though he isn't a high weight speed guy, same with Caleb Downs for the same reason. I think the tape is too good, and I just think that, for all the love that, everybody wants to get the 6'5", 4'4" guy, at every position. Everybody wants that guy, but that guy doesn't always exist, and that's why the tape matters. And you got to really, really base your scouting off of the tape, and that's why these guys are really, really going to be impact players in the NFL, regardless of their physical makeup. And honestly, you see the impact that these guys have had against guys that have been pros or are pro or that are going to be pros in college football, that have already been drafted in their previous years, are guys that are coming into the league with them this year that are going to be impact players in the NFL, and that's just what it is. So again, from the Blue Chip Podcast, man, I hope you guys have a blessed week. Stay safe, and I hope I really, really do appreciate you guys tuning into the pod and everything you do. I really do appreciate all the love. Have a blessed week. Peace.